Hello boys and girls, welcome to the book diary for Slaughterhouse 5. I've just been filming some videos. I filmed an intro for the bookshelf tour, but realized that it's getting dark really quickly, although tomorrow is supposed to be a really cloudy day, so I'm not sure how better that's gonna be, but hopefully I can do that in the morning. My face is not required, I'm just gonna be behind the camera, so it's fine. Today is, what is it, 19th or something like that? Wait, let me check. Today is the 20th of January. I was giving people a bit more time and hoping that I will still do this in time myself. I have my Slaughterhouse 5 copy and it's not a big book, so I'm hoping that I'm still gonna be able to do this in time, as I said. But I wanted to give people a bit more time because I didn't set up the Goodreads group until quite late, and I wanted people to get their comments in there so I can read them on camera here. So how are you? I actually miss doing this because I feel like it's a good thing to have it bi-monthly, so I get the time to miss you guys. It's like a little book club and I love it. As tradition dictates now, I want to read the first sentence to officially open this book diary into existence. I heard mixed reviews. I heard that some people are really hating this book. So I was like, well, that's great. That's promising. Cool. Interesting. It's interesting to see what I'll think. Yeah, the first sentence is, all this happened more or less. So is our narrator not really reliable? Cool, I'm fine with that. I'm down for that. I am very excited. I'm sorry if you guys didn't like it, by the way. I don't know, maybe I won't either, but I hope I will, because my last read wasn't entirely a success. This one was crazy, by the way. This month I've read so much for me. I don't read that much usually. Interesting start of the year. Anyway, I'll see you in a bit. Hi. Are you a human? If you have a cat, does your cat does that?
What is it, my brother?
You do not know the way.
You don't know the way.
Hello guys, so yesterday I didn't actually end up reading, whoops, but I did just edit a lot and had a few drinks and was just chilling. It's only 1 o'clock, but it's really dark. It doesn't really seem like it is, but it is. My room is dark, just trust me. But look, it's snowing. It's snowing again and I'm so happy. But now it's so snowy and cozy outside that all I want to do is to really just cuddle up and read. Maybe I will. So I'm just a few pages in, but I'm a little bit confused, really. I'm a little bit confused. Granted, I only read a couple of pages, but it seems to be a book about writing a book where the main character is a war survivor, and it seems interesting. It seems a little bit like a wonky writing style that is supposed to be sort of sarcastic, but also painful, I suppose. It's a bizarre writing style. It's supposed to be like that. I'm just at the part where there's a guy with a bag and it shows the Eiffel Tower figure, and yeah, I don't know. The fact is that I just finished The Miniaturist before this book, and that one was also with the writing style. It was a bit unusual, sort of look at this is unexpected. So I'm kind of ah man, but I just read one like that. Maybe I'll feel differently in a bit, and it's snowing outside and it's just making me happy, so yeah. Surprise, surprise, didn't do any reading yesterday. Very mad today. I woke up just being really angry, not in a good mood. I think I'm just a little bit overwhelmed with everything that I feel like I need to do, although all of these things are something that I set up for myself. Other than cleaning, all I do is clean and tidy. Clean the flat constantly. It's never clean. Yeah, I really need to start reading. How are you doing? Morning. I cannot believe how unproductive of a book diary this month is. I am still those 4 pages or whatnot into it. This week has been so busy that I feel like I didn't have any chance to actually sit down and read it, but I read some of the other book, so yeah. Which means, because today is 27th of January, I want to just sort of read this then this weekend, and I have a live stream that I need to log in for at 10:30. It's for Quarterly Club for the Miniaturist. Also need to think of what I'm gonna nominate. I also thought I'm gonna go ahead and decide with you guys here what I'm gonna nominate for the quarterly club, but at this point that you're watching this is already had happened and I already nominated it, so it's not really spoiling anything. But yeah, what should I? Okay, so I decided that I had a few options here. I was either gonna nominate Uprooted, which I heard brilliant things about, but I don't know how much I feel like reading it at the moment. Then I was really wanting to maybe go for Battle Royale, because this is really something I want to read soon, but this is a very hefty book and I don't want to nominate extremely big books, because if people are not enjoying it then they might feel obligated to read it, and if it's short then it's a little bit less excruciating to read if you don't like it. Actually, this is quite big as well, but I think that it's just the format of it is gonna be much easier to read. And this is We Are the Ants. This has representation, this has aliens and self-exploration, and I just thought it might be good. I woke up so late today. I was extremely exhausted, but I did sleep very well, so I suppose it was worth it, you know, sacrificing half of the day for that. So sad. But yeah, I woke up super late, but decided to actually, you know, I have to read today. So started reading this. I am now just starting chapter 3. It is a struggle, I'm not gonna lie. So I'm gonna go through some of my thoughts. So the beginning, the chapter 1 was a big what the hell is happening for me. One thing with this book that I'm finding is that it's very disorienting and it's very not coherent, and I understand that this may be a choice of style, but as a reader I find that it's a bit unnecessary at times. I understand that it adds to a story somewhat, but sometimes it's just a little bit too much, a little bit too over the top, I suppose. So I'm just gonna go through some of the tabs that I made while reading. This is just a quote that I quite liked from the first chapter. It said, "You know, you never wrote a story with the villain in it." I told him that was one of the things I learned in college after the war. Depending on perspective, one's villain is another person's hero, so quite like that. Then he kept talking about like baby fat from everyone, and it was just a bit weird. I think my main problem with this book is the writing style. It's very repetitive and I don't usually have problem with that because I actually quite enjoy it, but it was very excessive. So just the things like, those were our scrawny years. We had a lot of scrawny veterans with their scrawny wives for friends, and like a lot of places like that. It tends to have a lot of short paragraphs that don't necessarily connect. It's very jumpy, and I understand once the story starts about Billy, we're still in chapter 1, it's still the same, so it's not just to portray the instability of the character. I felt like it's just the writing style, even more so probably in the first chapter. It just like goes from, I understand there's meaning within every single of those paragraphs, but it felt like so disconnected from the rest of the story. It was just a struggle basically. I feel like that's a very fine thing to do, but maybe not at the beginning of the story when you don't have the grounds and you don't know the characters and you don't care that much and you can't connect these little bits yet, because it's very exhausting. Then we have that bit when he's visiting his friend and he's with the woman Mary, who brings up the point that all the war stories are represented in the way that it's glorified, and then he makes a promise that he's gonna call the book The Children's Crusade. The main thing that I feel, of course there are topics that definitely are beyond this, but I feel like this book, the writing style, is very much like a child's writing style. Remember those times where at school you would be told to write like a story about your day, and then you would be, I went to the shop, I got this and this, then my dad started watching TV, and then there's no coherence, there's no continuity, you just jump from that to that in very simplistic sentences, very repetitive. That's exactly how I feel about this book sometimes, because just for example, there was a Lufthansa plane that was supposed to fly from Philadelphia to Boston to Frankfurt. O'Hare was supposed to get on a Philadelphia and I was supposed to get on in Boston, and off we'd go. But Boston was sucked in, so the plane flew straight to Frankfurt from Philadelphia, and I became a non-person in the Boston fog, and Lufthansa put me in a limousine with some other non-person and sent us to a motel for non-night. Like, I'm sorry. But another thing that slightly irritated me were the bits with the "so it goes" and so on. The "so it goes" one I marked initially here, and then later on, like in the next page, it was explained that this is because the character thinks that "so it goes" is the Tralfamadorian's way of saying, you know, the circle of a person dying, and it just goes from the beginning, I assume. So now every time we are encountering death in the book, it says "so it goes," and I understand why, but at the same time I'm just cringing inside very hard. It's used so often that it just somehow irritates me. From the sound of it, a lot of the people don't necessarily know what they are doing, and they're very incompetent, but Billy is extremely so. I get a sense that he was so tired that he was quite suicidal, especially in the sense where, you know, when he was shot and then he just stood still because he thought that, you know, it's polite to give another chance for the sniper guy. Don't know if this is stemming from him just wanting everything to end, or if it's just because he's so untrained. Although we do get some inclination later on that he is just wanting to be left behind, so you know. And then sometimes I feel like some bits are very irrelevantly thrown there for somewhat of a shock factor, like the girl with the pony trying to have sex. That paragraph, the whole paragraph, was very irrelevant, and again I just felt like it's just taking it out of the story. And yes, I giggled because it's a funny thing, but it's just, it was so, there's so many bits like that, like this paragraph here, that just added very little to nothing, and it's the whole page, you know. The only bit that I started to actually enjoy were the bits, or I suppose I was just a little bit relieved because it was interesting to me, it was the time travel bit. And I don't entirely know if this is just delusions and if it's supposed to be symbolic of just the mindset of very tired, giving up mind, playing tricks, or is it supposed to be a symbol for something else entirely? I'm not really sure just yet. I finally found the story to be somewhat fluent, ironically, when the time travel started. And it was also, and we even had like a funny bit when he goes into the car and he's trying to find the wheel, and he gets really angry and irritated by the fact that his wheel is stolen, but in fact he was just in the back seat, which is why you couldn't find the steering wheel. And I don't know, I thought that was kind of funny. And then I found this to be quite a powerful sentence. It says, "They had been behind German lines before many times, living like woods creatures, living from moment to moment in youthful terror, thinking brainlessly with their spinal cords." I think it's a very strong sentence that describes a lot of what war is about and how people are just used as marionettes in somebody else's game. But yeah, that is where I am now. I've enjoyed it a little bit at the very end of that, but I am at page 43 at the moment. You know, if it weren't for Book in a Jar, I don't know if I would have made it past the first chapter because it was so not gripping for me. I just couldn't care less. It made no sense. It was straining to read, not in like emotionally straining, not in like I had to think so much. It was just straining because it made very little sense and it felt like work way more than it felt like it's pleasure. But yeah, I can't remember when is the checkup point. I need to check the Goodreads group if it's after chapter 4 or after chapter 5, so I'll check that and probably will speak to you just then and tell you what I thought about these chapters, and we'll read some comments from you guys. I'm really interested to see what you were thinking. I'm really struggling. I'm really not finding this quite as interesting as I was hoping for, but you never know, maybe it'll get better. Hello. So it's 20 to 7. I've been sort of trying to read this book all day. I mean, I was really having like difficulties focusing, but technically all I've done today in the second half of the day was try to read this bloody book. So I am now at the end of chapter 4. So it's on page 71. 71! So it started weird and then it continued to be weird. And I know this is absolutely just personal preference, but oh my god, this book is so like try-hard hipstery. Look at me being so deep by not making entirely perfect sense. I honestly hate this book a little bit. And I know it just feels so random, but this is literally, if this book would be a person, this would be the person that pretends to be so different but not know that they're so different, and they just don't want to mention them being different because they're so different. I'm sorry, I'm just so angry at this book. I don't know why. I was just expecting it to be much better. I think the writing style is just not for me. I still stand by thinking that it is written in a way a child writes, and I'm gonna be extremely happy if any of you guys actually like this book, because obviously when I pick a book, well, actually you guys pick a book, but when we pick a book, I obviously hope that most of us are gonna like it and enjoy it and take something from it. For me personally, this has not been great so far, but I am reading it, and I don't know how I feel about DNFing a book in a jar. This is definitely the closest I got to DNFing a book, but it's not like that big of a book, although that being said, clearly took me a whole bloody half a day to read this. Still salty about that. Basically reading because I really want to read your thoughts on it. So let's just go through some of the tabs that I have. So one of the things that really get to me, I don't know why, it really irritates me, that the abuse of "so it goes." I don't know why this phrase like really annoys me so much, that every time they mention death, this happens. And it was just like the cherry on top when they said that about bloody champagne, because it says, "So Billy uncorked it with his thumbs. It didn't make a pop. The champagne was dead. So it goes." Why? I don't have a rational explanation of why it annoys me so much, but every time I read it I like cringe and I die myself a little bit inside. So it goes for me as well. It's actually kind of amusing to an extent, in a very annoying way. Now about my thing when I said that I don't know if this is him being delusional and remembering stuff and just coping with trauma, I actually have a new theory that he never survived the war. I think that he might have died there, and this is him in that moment. This is how he deals with trauma. I sort of want it to be that way. I don't know if we're gonna learn if it is at the end of the book. If I suffer through this book, you better let me know what's up. I bet they don't. Yeah. So my current theory is that he never lives through the war, and this is his way of not necessarily been coping, it's just what happens to him there. And I think that would be a brilliant way if we weren't cluttered with all of these irrelevant bits and information and repetitiveness and just annoying writing style. Again, this is just me. I'm happy if you guys enjoyed it. There was a bit that I was like, hats off for that one. Billy coughed when the door was opened, and when he coughed, he shit thin gruel. This was in accordance with the third law of motion according to Sir Isaac Newton. This law tells us that for every action there is a reaction which is equal and opposite in direction. But I thought it was quite like a witty thing to write in there. And then we have this bit where he's in the spaceship and they're talking about free will, and aliens are saying, "If I haven't spent so much time studying Earthlings, I wouldn't have any idea what was meant by free will. I've visited 31 inhabited planets in the universe, and I have studied reports on 100 more. Only on Earth is there any talk of free will." And I thought that was a very powerful bit. This is what sort of stuff that I was expecting going into this book, a bit more, I suppose a bit more philosophical, a bit more impactful regarding the war, but it's not necessarily what I wanted. It was just, I enjoy parts like this in this book, and what I don't enjoy is the writing style and all of the random piece of crap of information that I really just don't care about, and I feel like I'm wasting my time reading this. It was like disrespectful to the reader to write this. I'm being very harsh here. I don't know why, it just sort of, it frustrated me for some reason. But anyway, the part that I was looking for is to read what you guys thought about it, and I'm hoping some of you liked it, but I also sort of hoping that some of you agree with me. Okay, so chapters 1 to 4, and Candace, it says, "Hi, I haven't read this one since high school, but I remember enjoying it very much, especially in comparison to some of the really dry stuff we had to read. After Slaughterhouse, I got so many Voneguts from the library as I could find and read them all. I'm going to grab a copy today, and our library has one, and start reading it again." So yeah, this is not really a great post, but the thread looked lovely. We have Bunny, and she says, "I wish I had written a more comprehensive review 10 years ago. Apparently I like this book, but this time around I am not enjoying it. Maybe I like it the further I go, hopefully. I am secretly happy that you also not enjoying it." Then we have Gite Feliciano. Sorry, I'm horrible at this pronunciation. I am unsure how I feel about this book at the moment. There is a lot of back and forth, sometimes it is quite confusing. I like how he included the Serenity Prayer in chapter 3 and summed it up by saying, among the things that Billy Pilgrim could not change were the past, the present, and the future. The author basically is saying that no matter what Pilgrim does, he will not be able to change his life. Such optimism. So far, I think this book is doing a great job describing mental illness characteristics of traumatic war experiences, even if they are not labeled that way in plain sight. I am sure his vivid imagination also plays a role in this. I really kind of like the whole repetition thing, so it goes. Oh, I hate it. I hate it, but I'm glad that you like it. I think the first chapter really intrigued me because the narrator was hilarious, the way he was referring to himself and repeating weird phrases. It is definitely an interesting way of writing, but it seems random and jumbled, with some passage having no meaning possibly. The rest of the chapters did not catch my attention like the intro. I do not even know what to say about chapter 4 because it was so wild. I think I am going to finish the book since it is pretty short, but I cannot say if I like it or not right now. Will get better and less confusing. See, this is the point that I was sort of hoping that someone's gonna be enjoying this more than I am. I am glad that you think that is a good representation of the traumatic war experience. It's definitely an interesting take on it, and I don't have the problem with the type of the book whatsoever. I would actually love to read the book where this is the type of coping mechanism involved with the experience. However, I just wish it was written by someone else who was not, as you also mentioned, random and jumbled in his writing style. I think I would have enjoyed it way more. This is quite unusual because I was always sort of like known at school for liking, even back at school, for liking a little bit more uncommon writing styles, a little bit more jumbled and a little bit more symbolic than most of my classmates. And I would usually enjoy the books that people didn't enjoy because they were a bit too deep, you know, like in the sense that it's like sort of like almost like a excruciating, why don't you say what you mean kind of thing. I always loved them because I like predicting things, I like to interpret things, I like open endings, but this was just above and beyond for me. This was just a little bit too much, to the extent that I lost focus and I lost interest, worst of all. Then we have AJ. He's saying, first chapter was weird. I wasn't expecting the style. It seems like a semi-autobiographical biography. It is, actually. The actual writing itself is easy to read, but at times the narrative itself wanders a bit. Intrigued enough to carry on. I'm happy that we turn to a more straight narrative from this point. I seem to be reading books from an omniscient? Why you use such words I can't pronounce? Point of view at the moment, and it's never been my favorite. I never feel as connected to the characters and get the emotional impact of third person. However, the prose really flows and is easy to read. I feel like for me, like, there's such a massive lack of flow in this book, but I'm glad you disagree. Also, the characterization is good, mainly for Billy and Weary. I don't know how to pronounce his name either. The other guy that's like likes to beat other people. I knew going into it there was going to be something to do with time travel, but it's not the sort I thought it would be. It seems the time shifts are going to be very fluid and sudden. I'm hoping it doesn't get too disorienting. The whole book for me is too disorienting as it is. That time travel bit is actually the one that I prefer and like. I definitely think this is something to do with trauma rather than anything else, but the time travel bits are by far my favorite ones. I like the setup and then explanation of so it goes and can see we are going to be reading it a lot as a way to highlight every death and drive it home. I'm also getting the sense that we are basically, yeah, especially when the champagne is dead. I'm also getting the sense that we are basically seeing Billy experience PTSD, also strong hints at Billy committing suicide. Yep. Not many thoughts to add for this chapter. This is about chapter 3. I do like the understated style. I feel like a lot of things I read would have really driven home on many points, such as the death of the two musketeers and also the clogs on Weary's feet, to really try and get me to feel it. I like that it doesn't do this because it actually resonates more with me. Chapter 4, I was already beginning to enjoy this book, but this chapter is the one that I really found myself loving it. Some of the humor is starting to come through and there were a couple of bits that were funny. The bit where Billy coughs and shits himself and it is likened to a rocket. Rocket is both funny and yet grim at the same time. I know that was a good part. I read and watched many documentaries on World War I and World War II, so I was well aware of the horrific realities of it, but it is still horrible to read about. I a good thing, I guess. I read Fahrenheit 451 towards the end of last year, and the style and quality of the book reminds me of that. Vonnegut is pulling me into the story in such a way that it doesn't feel like I am reading a story. In my opinion, it is masterfully done. Well, I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I've ranted to AJ on Instagram for a lot of today, so he knows that I don't necessarily agree with him. I think that it was a very childish way of doing it. I don't agree that this is masterful whatsoever, in my opinion. I do love reading about World War II, especially, not so much about World War One. Don't really have a lot of experience in that, but World War II I've read quite a bit, and I'm also very familiar with that because of my personal family's history and the history of my country, but I just don't think that this does it justice. But I do agree that I also like a more cold approach to the deaths, because it was such a mundane thing that there's no reason to dramatize each and every passing in the way that most books about that time period do. And I do appreciate that. I just still think that the randomness and the other details just sort of, they overwhelm the impact and of everything else and makes it too clustered for me to enjoy this. Again, I don't really know if I'm expressing myself correctly, but I hope you guys catch my meaning. As for PTSD, there's definitely signs of when he jumps into the future, especially the what he described as random fits of weeping and night terrors, even when he was traveling in the cart or somewhere with the other people, and when he's like constantly screaming and kicking. Periods when you wake up and you're not sure what year it is, where you are, just disorientation. It's very extremely common, so it's definitely that. Not sure how does that really come into my current theory that he never made it to that age, but that is definitely there. But I still think that it's just current trauma for some reason. Then we have China. She's saying, hi G, well hello G, how are you doing? I know you haven't been feeling well these last couple of weeks, and I hope that you are feeling better. Thank you. Random note, but just wanted to let you know you were saying my name right the first time you mentioned it in last month's month's book in the jar vlog. I'm good. I'm happy about that, because I mispronounce everything. It is pronounced like the country, but thank you for asking in the video to be sure. I've finally been able to pick up Slaughterhouse, as I just finished reading Nevernight, which took me most of the beginning of the month to complete. Nevernight fried my brain, so I am excited to read a fast-paced novel, which will also help complete my goal of reading at least one classic novel per month. Not sure if this is gonna be very fast-paced, but yeah, Nevernight can be a bit draining. As for Slaughterhouse, I am enjoying it way more than I was expecting to. I didn't really know what I was getting into when I picked it up, because I felt like I was one of the very few who wasn't forced to read it in high school. I wasn't forced to read it in high school. High five. I'm enjoying the narrator's voice. His tone is not as serious as I thought it would be for a post-war, anti-war novel. He is making me laugh a lot. For example, when he was talking about the soldier who looked like a filthy flamingo. The narrator has a dark sense of humor, which I am enjoying quite a bit. I do agree that the humor that we do see is definitely a bit more grotesque and dark. I feel like I have an author that is just way too good at that kind of stuff. Back from when I was living in Lithuania, that it just doesn't compare to me that much. Maybe I just have very, very high expectations when it comes to World War II because I was reading his stuff, and it just that one just made me laugh so hard in the way that you want to also cry because it's such a horrible topic, and this didn't compare to me. But I am extremely happy that you're liking the book. The writing style was a bit confusing to follow in the beginning with the jumping of different time periods, but it does help with certain passages actually relate to others, as I do see a reason for those specific moments in time. However, there are certain passages that kind of veer away from the story and underlining themes, which causes some confusion. Agreed. I do appreciate the representation of PTSD and enjoying that it is not so obvious. You can tell that Billy is suffering from PTSD and alcoholism through certain passages and little hints the author gives away, but it is not so blatantly obvious as the narrator actually makes you think a lot. I am also enjoying the underlying themes about time, the past, present and future. Chapter 4 is a little bit strange, but it is an interesting portrayal of hallucinations as a result of the brain injury he suffered due to the plane crash Billy was in, and even probably due to his alcohol problem. I am looking forward to the last half of the book, mainly to figure out what the underlying message Vonnegut has to portraying with the alien abduction. So I also appreciate that a lot. I just seem to not be able to get away from the writing style. I just feel like I'm so saddened because I actually love the idea of it, and I'm just very, very disappointed that I am not enjoying it. But yet again, as I said like so many times before now, I really, really hope that you guys do, and it seems like some of you definitely are. Laura Diana is saying, this book is definitely not in my comfort zone and I am enjoying it more than I thought I would. And that makes me happy. I'm hoping that maybe I will feel a little bit better in the second half of the book. Wish me luck. I'm very, very blah about this book at the moment. I was, however, extremely excited about reading the comments. I think this was the most, like, I'm always excited, but I think with this book I was looking forward to it the most that I have ever been, because I needed to see what you guys are thinking and I wanted to see your thoughts, and I'm loving the details that you guys pick up, and that's a match, and there are some new ones that I haven't thought about before. That's all of the comments for that part. The next one is just the the half of the book, so it's like 100 pages. I think the plan is to now go and edit the video and upload the video because it is Sunday and I sort of forgot. I'll check in with you later. Hello, I've just come back from the gym session. So my plan, I had a lot of plans today and I knew that I won't be able to do everything because it's literally just impossible. But because of the type of the session, I feel like my hair is like all over the place and I would need to wash it. And in order for me to film, after I wash it, it's gonna be already too dark outside because the gym session was at 11 and I live quite far away from that place. So hop in the shower, clean the stove because it's disgusting, make risotto so we have something to take for lunch tomorrow and for dinner today. Well, a take on risotto, it's not like a proper risotto, but whatever. Probably gonna just make myself a small protein shake. I think I got coconut milk because I'm kind of hungry, but the risotto takes a while to cook. I'm guarding my bag. Good boy. Hopefully I have enough time. Well, I'm probably gonna edit as well. Oh my god, this is what happens. Like yesterday I said I'm gonna film, I'm gonna read a little bit if we have time, but there was a lot to clean, so we really didn't have any time. Then we just had some food and watched some Brooklyn Nine-Nine. But yeah, I really want to make progress and hopefully finish the book today or tomorrow. I say that, so it's probably not gonna happen. Anyway, I'll see you in a bit.
Hello. How's it going? What are you doing? You live in a box? Catley. Hello.
I'm making the second half of the Six of Crows candles because I made the first one a week ago. I put these up because I got them for Christmas. Yesterday I put them the other way around and then I realized that I had to repeel them and put it the other way. Like secret bits of Harry Potter in my house, so one is here. Not a lot of people notice this because it's like a weird place, but I have that. I really like it. Hi guys, so it's a little bit after 10 o'clock at the night now. I started reading at 7 and I just finished Slaughterhouse 5. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie, there were so many times that I just wanted to stop, but I wanted it to be over. I do have to say that the second part was better for me personally than the first one. Just, I don't know, it's just, I don't know. I'm way too tired today, just way too shattered, just in general, today, to go through this. So I'm gonna catch up with you another day, hopefully tomorrow. It's definitely an interesting concept and it's definitely an important topic, and I like the main message. There's no free will and it's pointless to try and describe war, basically, is what I'm getting from this. You think this would be way better read in class, because I feel like you would take more time for it. You would, because this is one of those books that you would have to analyze to get the full extent of the meaning and everything from it. And again, I really appreciated how different this book was from the usual ones, and the take on the whole issue. I absolutely love that, but I really didn't like the execution of it. So yeah, interesting experience. Hi guys, it is the next day after yesterday, Tuesday. It is Tuesday today. Yeah, I owe you a second half of whatever this was. So Slaughterhouse 5, huh? Okay, let's just go through the tabs and then I'll tell you what I thought this book was mainly about and what the main messages were, or symbolism. So the first tab that I made was about Billy's personality in general. This was when Billy travels back in time and he is with his family at the Grand Canyon, and then afterwards in the caverns. And in both places Billy is very afraid. He is clearly not even an adventurous soul when he is a kid, and that just sort of gives us a glimpse of how unprepared and how unsuitable he is for combat to begin with. A lot of people would be, but in his case it seems to be extremely so. Then I had another one of those pages. Literally there's one bit here and then there's one bit here that the repetitiveness, it really irritated me. So on this page here it says, they were all monsters of checkers and chess and bridge and cribbage, I don't know what that is, and dominoes and anagrams and charades and ping pong and billiard as well. And then write a few sentences down and it says, the Englishmen had hoarded these so cunningly that now, as the war was ending, they had 3 tons of sugar, 1 ton of coffee, 1,100 pounds of chocolate, 700 pounds of tobacco, 1,700 pounds of tea, 2 tons of flour, 1 ton of canned beef, 1,200 pounds of canned butter, 1,600 pounds of canned cheese, 800 pounds of powdered milk, and 2 tons of orange marmalade. And here I am, sat with 0 fucks. These bits annoyed me so much just because how often they were there, and the battery was flashing. Damn it. There was this point where they mentioned that most of the supplies in the camp were not German origin, other than candles and soap, which were mostly made out of Jews and gypsies. And then obviously the unrelatable narrator is unrelatable, and so I went and googled, and what do you know, that seems to have been the case, although mostly it was propaganda to make the prisoners scared and intimidated, because it would do the trick, wouldn't it? The first time we are told that Billy was introduced to science fiction, I actually tabbed it here and it was on page 82, and my original thought instantaneously was that this is where he caught his coping mechanism from. This is where he started adapting it to help him out. This was already after the war, which would mean that everything that we're seeing are already flashbacks. I just wasn't sure if this is like him dealing with trauma to begin with, but it makes way more sense that it is clearly just PTSD afterwards, and this is his interpretation of what happened, because our brain sometimes is just not able to interpret the events on itself, when they're too traumatic, and we have to put it in some sort of reference that makes it a bit more understandable. Now, a few things when it comes to the alien races and the whole like sci-fi bits. In the future, I think there's quite a few bits where tied together the similarities between his alien race, I can never remember their names that he said, at Truffle something, and Kilgore Trout's work, and it seems like it's definitely without a doubt based upon the stories that he read from this author. I think actually the main purpose of that was to justify some of the things that were happening to him. So for example, there is a scene where the Germans make him strip, and then there's also a scene where, and obviously this makes him extremely uncomfortable, and then there's a scene where he has to strip for the aliens, make himself feel like a really nice specimen. So he's just turning this really traumatizing experience around. And I think I already spoke about this point. There was a tab somewhere where they're saying that only you Earthlings, like we're so well traveled space-wise, and we visited and searched and researched so many planets, and only here do you have, or do you bother yourself with just such concept as free will. And the whole thing of this, so it goes to say that life is circle, life is already preset, you go around and the cycle continues even after you die. I think this is how our main character is dealing with survival's guilt, because I think that's another, because throughout this book he is very he puts himself down. The whole book, it paints the picture of how incompetent the person is, how not special, how he is qualified, and it is a very common thing for war survivors to feel the guilt of surviving when there's so many greater men next to them, friends, people who they got to know, and then they died the next day. They died and they saw that death repeated almost every single day. Somebody would die in front of them. At some point, inevitably, you would just start asking, why am I still alive? And I assume this really just gets worse and worse and worse when you get out of that type of situation and back into your normal life, and everything just seems very surreal. And how can this exist when that exists? Being taken by the aliens, and the aliens sort of laughing at his face and mocking him for asking such a stupid question when the free will is concerned, because there's no such thing. That reassurance of someone else that this was all preset and there's nothing you can do, and there was nothing that you could have done to either save them or sacrifice yourself, and you survived because you always survived because this has already happened, type of thing. So this is my take on it. Hell knows if I'm right or not, but this seems to be what I think this was about. Now the next tab that I have is when we're talking about his wife, and his wife is Valencia. And there were just some bits that really, I don't think they were necessary. I suppose it says a lot about a person if he gets engaged with a person that he really doesn't care about, and with a person that he didn't intend to get engaged. It says a lot about the person's state of mind and how much he cares about his surroundings and how much he understands what's happening around him. It tells us a little bit about that, but I just don't feel like it was necessary for these type of lines, like he had been rewarded for marrying a girl nobody in his right mind would have married. And previously there were a lot of lines for her constantly eating, and then they're speaking on the balcony and she's saying thank you, and he's saying you're welcome, it was nice, I'm glad. Then she began to cry, what's the matter? I'm so happy, good. I never thought anybody would marry me, said Billy Pilgrim, which was again repeated so many times. And then next she says, I'm going to lose weight for you. So if you're fat, you're unlovable? Do I even need to like explain why that kind of annoys me? Then we go to Dresden, and they are told to live in the used to be slaughterhouse, and the number is 5, and this is where the title comes from. And then again we have like the next page, it says, outside the plane, the machine named Valencia Marble Pilgrim was eating a Peter Paul Mound bar and waving bye-bye. Okay, so now she's a machine. Moving on. There was a bit where they meet someone else and they're asking one of the people who they're with, aren't you too young to be in the army? And he says, yes I am. And then he looks at the other one, aren't you too old to be here? And he's like, yes I am. Then she asked Billy, what is he supposed to be? And then he said, I don't know, just trying to keep warm. And then that person says, all the real soldiers are dead. And the narrator says, it was true. So it goes. So this is just another one of the bits where it makes me really think that their opinion of themselves is not the greatest, and I feel that it just adds to the survival's guilt. When we traveled in time and we met the author, Trout, and Trout was trying to impress or just like mess with the people at the party, and he was like talking about the funeral of a famous chef, and they said that they were sprinkling parsley and paprika on the deceased before they closed the casket. I just thought that was the most hilarious thing in this book, and I don't know, it's just I just thought that it was hilarious. There was also one bit where the Germans see them coming and they are sort of like angry about how the passengers treated the horses, that they worked them out, and I just think that that was very, you know, symbolic, because obviously the people were treated even worse. And there was one line though where it just says, "Good night, Americans," he said in German, "sleep well." It's simply because the war was over, and then suddenly a person is just a person, and another person sees themselves still as German and he is American, but you're just people. Then we have a bit where the actual author is saying, "I was there," or "Hare was there," and they spent the night and blah blah blah, and how they came back and everything. We had a few bits where he was like, "That was I, that was me, I am the author who wrote this book." I think there were like 2 bits before that he said that. I mean, cool dude, we get it. Oh, I also just, this might not be like at all accurate, and but I also thought that it could be possible that, you know how he was traveling with the guy who was extremely just like a bully and he just liked to kill things even though he was 18. Weary, this is gonna be completely far-fetched, but to me sometimes it looked like the weary guy was actually representative of war itself. Vulgar, aggressive for no reason, cold. I mean, I know that they have like a whole abandonment issue stuff, but he made a friend of his promise him that he's gonna kill whoever is responsible, and the guy who's responsible is the guy that was in the war, Billy, and that he's gonna kill him, but only after a while. And so in this scenario, Weary would be the war, and the guy that was supposed to kill him would be sort of like the war afterwards. So we don't know how he dies, but it just gets taken, and he's sort of basically like making a goodbye speech, and I am just inclined to believe that it was probably a suicide because of all of the things that he has seen and he cannot live with. He's just saying that I had enough, and there really isn't any other threat coming for him other than himself and his memories. But yeah, this is very, very far-fetched and basically has no merit to it. This is just a thought that I had. So I think they were really just, other than all of this horrible PTSD stuff and trauma, humiliation of war, pointlessness of war, 2 main points were, one, that you cannot really stop the war and that there's no free will, and 2, that the war is fought by kids. Hence the original title of the book, Children's Crusade, was definitely highlighted that the age of the average person fighting besides Billy was extremely young. And that no one was really prepared, and that especially Billy, I feel like he was chosen especially because he was such an unsuitable specimen of a soldier. War is fought by babies. I feel like that was in chapter 1, and that was the main message to be taken and to be... This is mostly what makes this book anti-war, in my opinion, because it is very hard to justify war, but even harder if it is fought by kids. But anyway, so those are my thoughts. I think I mentioned most of the things that I wanted to. I don't know, maybe I didn't. Maybe I'll remember what I wanted to say when I look at the comments, which is what I want to do now. So yeah, we're gonna look at the comments, and then I'm gonna sit down. Well, I'm already sitting, but you know what I mean, and run this book through Copile very briefly. I'm not gonna speak obviously too much about it because I've already done that. So the first one is from Bunny, and she's saying, yeah, I'm DNFing. I feel a slump coming if I don't switch to something else, so I'm going to start the miniatures instead. Yeah, that probably didn't go much better. I don't know what happened in the last 10 years that I liked it then and can't deal with it now. Apparently I'm not the same person anymore. None of us are. So it's fine, maybe for the better. For me, it's definitely for the better. But I'm super interested to hear everyone else's thoughts and video. That's fine, dude. I probably would have not gone with this properly through either. Then we have China. Chapter 5 and 6 were very weird and difficult to get through. It was especially difficult to get through when Billy was basically forced to have sex with Montana in front of the Tralfamadorians. I didn't think that he was forced to, I think that he wanted to. Although I did appreciate it when Billy asked for Montana's permission because she was absolutely terrified to be there. Chapter 8 has to be my favorite chapter so far because all the passages actually begin to make sense together. I can feel Vonnegut's writing becoming more expressive during the scenes of Dresden and the slaughterhouse, especially during the passages about the songs when Billy gets sick from hearing them, both in the slaughterhouse and in the plane with the Barber Quartet. I also enjoy getting Billy's perspective on the war and the bombing of Dresden when he is actually there, as opposed to when he talks about it in the future. And then we have AJ's comment. Chapter 5. Well, that was a long one. It wasn't it? It was like half of the book. But I think we have it basically confirmed Billy is suffering from some sort of PTSD, mental break, sorry. The bit about the Bible teaching you to kill people less connected was funny. I didn't like the bit where the author narrator announced himself though. I thought I was another funny grim moment. I thought I was another funny bit moment and nothing was added by the narrator announcing himself in that way. Pulled me out a bit. Not much more left in the book now. I'm intrigued as to how this is all going to wrap up. Chapter 6. Not much more to add in this chapter. More themes on war and the cost and morals of it. Seems like there was no reason to bomb Dresden, as it has already been mentioned as having no military significance in the war, and that it's a beautiful cultural city, so it was only bombed just because and to demoralize. And we are finally introduced to Slaughterhouse 5. Chapter 7. I think it's easy to forget sometimes how young Billy is, and this chapter reminded me of that. Also, despite all the brutality and horrors he had to go through, he keeps being referred to as not a real soldier. Another scene where Vonnegut's underrated style shines through, in the moment where Billy and Derby have a spoonful of syrup, and after everything they have been through, the simple sweet thing reduces them to tears. That was really heartbreaking. Chapter 8. I found it interesting and poignant that just as Derby is preaching the American ideology, the Americans begin bombing Dresden. Also, I've said it multiple times now, but the firebombing itself was understated and got only a few sentences. It's saying something that this book has actually had very little action and yet has kept my interest. Chapter 9 and 10. Not too much to add here, although the scene in chapter 10 where they had a pit of bodies and one was literally vomited himself to death trying to clear it out was pretty grim. It was pretty grim, I do agree. And then let's go to the final thoughts from China. Not sure how I feel about the ending, kind of ended strangely and abruptly. Chapter 9 took a weird turn and there were some things in there I wasn't expecting. All in all, I enjoyed the book, mostly the parts of when Billy was in Dresden and in the slaughterhouse. I would have liked to learn more about Billy's son Robert because he seemed like a direct reflection of Billy. I can understand why the book was banned, even though I don't like the idea of banning or burning books, but I do understand why it was banned, especially during the times of when it was published. I ended up rating it a low 4 mainly because of the narrator's humor, but the ending was very strange and confusing. I might have to reread at the ending to understand it fully. Yeah, I feel like because we already knew the big finale would be Dresden, right? Dresden bombing, it was a little bit anticlimactic because we didn't really get to spend so much time during that bombing. I think it was done on purpose though, basically to highlight the lack of the point of war. I think possibly that's how I see the ending. Laura Diana is saying, I don't have much to say. I gave this book 3 stars, didn't get bored reading it, but it was not amazing either. Fair. And then AJ is saying, overall I thought the book was okay. I found some of the writing style a bit annoying, but then at times it easily pulled me through. It's one of those ones that is definitely meant to stimulate thoughts, ideas and discussion rather than entertain. It's been a while now between me finishing reading and writing the sum up, and honestly it hasn't stuck with me like Fahrenheit 451 has. Book in a similar style. I think it got across the message it was trying to, though. As was said at the beginning, this wasn't going to be a book with beautiful people and heroes. It was simply displaying the horror and toll of war on the people that fight them and those around them. I would probably never think to recommend this, but if someone gets the opportunity, I would tell them to try it simply for its core message relatively short it is. You know what, let's go through the core pile. I need to like write it down somewhere. I don't think that we were purposely led to know the characters just because everyone was killed off so rapidly. I think that was sort of the point, and I understand that it was done purposefully because the whole book was a little bit like numbed, and death was supposed to be so not too shocking because it's such a mundane thing in this book. But at the same time, obviously the main thing that I look in the characters is if I care what happens to them and development of them. And I understand that this book is going to be a little bit weird on the core pile system because it's not the point of it, but for the characters, I mean, I can't really give it any more than 4. I found the mean guy interesting. I found some of the other side characters quite okay. 4 is the highest that I can really give to this part. For atmosphere, I really don't think that it was quite atmospheric, to be fair. I don't think we had a lot of... I don't think we were actually taking to those places, which is fair enough if you're trying to reflect that this is all flashbacks. Again, I don't think this was the point that the book was trying to make. The only atmospheric bit that I can think of was at the end where they were trying to recover bodies after the bombings, and there was a stench of rotting bodies and people were trying to, and then they were just torching them afterwards. So I think I'm gonna give it a 3, but just for that, just for the few bits and the parties as well. Those are the only bits that felt a little bit atmospheric, so 3 is a bit pushing it as well, but this is not gonna be a great rating. I'm sorry, but for the writing style I'm gonna give it a 1. Okay, I'll give it 1.5 because there were bits that were funny, and the bits that were supposed to be funny, however few, were actually quite dark and funny, which is the way I like it. The writing style was the whole thing of... because I actually really, as I said, enjoyed the idea and I like the concept of it and I like the main messages a lot. I agree with them wholeheartedly. I absolutely love the idea of like showing how war is fought by kids. The writing style just killed it for me. I did not it was just not for me personally whatsoever. For the plot, I'm actually gonna give it 5 because I could argue that this is under the writing style, but the writing style was so different that I really just take it separately. But for the plot, I'm gonna take it the way that it's written, as in like with time travel, and the way that it's sort of like structured, and the plot of like us jumping and, you know. So I'm gonna give it a 5 because the time travel bits were the only ones that I really kind of enjoyed. For the intrigue, I'm gonna give it a 1. It was very little of it. 40 pages, maybe even less, is pretty much when I was like, I'm not gonna learn anything new now, am I? So a 1 for intrigue because I pushed through, but I pushed through so it would be over. For logic, I mean, I can't fault this book for logic because it's not really supposed to be like that, but I'm gonna take some points off because I feel like it should have been done a bit clearer. I understand that it's supposed to be disorienting, the story and the way it's said, because of the mindset of Billy, but at the same time I felt like a lot of things were really, really unnecessary. A 5 again is as much as I can give it, which is like a 3 stars. And lastly, the enjoyment, I'm gonna give it a few points because I enjoyed the ideas, but the actual experience of reading this book was just painful. So for the enjoyment, I'm gonna give it, the lowest of the 2 stars is 2.3, so this is what I'm gonna give it. So we have 21.8, that's divided by 7 is 3.1, which is actually still 2 stars. I thought this could be like relatively close to 1. I think that's alright. 2 stars is okay. So I think that's everything. We are done. It was not my favorite book in the jar experience, but I really enjoy reading your comments and I hope that it wasn't excruciating for you guys. I'm really looking forward to the next one. Let me know all of your thoughts down below, because you know I always look for more of those. If you weren't participating in Goodreads page on the Goodreads page, do let us know what you thought in the comments. Be as spoilery as you like. Next book in the jar is gonna be in March. I think at the moment the Hate You Give is winning, and yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. I cannot wait for March to do another book like that with you. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye.